think you only love me cause I'm poppin'. This a layup, this a rebound, then it's driving. Tyson with the fade, not the hair, my hands rocking. When I link with ball point, you know it's knocking. I'm not the same. Thinking money made me change, nothing else to blame. Bougie stuck up in my way, singing Gucci gang. Gucci gang, think I'm Gucci Mane. I'm just playing in the cut, I got my Vans on. I'm not selfish, I get on to put my mans on. Always greedy since the day I got my first safe. 5'7", but I'm 6'8" when I stand on the money pals. Need a money counter, I broke my thumb from thumbing down. Wifey on my line, she told me to dumb it down. Mama on my line, asking how I'm dumbing now. I think you only love me cause I'm poppin'. This a layup, this a rebound, then it's driving. Tyson with the fade, not the hair, my hands rocking. When I link with ball point, you know it's knocking. Get out my way, I'm so unashamed. Throw it to my veins, like my 2K green or blue, I'm not into games. Focus on your player's face while I'm stacking change. We throw out what you got on your whole crew late. Every time I drop it, knock you make the school face. I can't stand to be around people who are two-faced. I can't stand to do some business if you're too late. I beat the beater defeated, I beat the beater mistreated, I beat the odds deleted. On top, I'm ODing. No rock star with these leather pants, I'm ACDCing. When I die, I bet they love me, but hate me when I'm breathing. I think you only love me cause I'm poppin'. This a layup, this a rebound, that's rubbing. Tyson with the fade, not the hair, my hands rocking. When I link with ball point. I think you only love me cause I'm poppin'. This a layup, this a rebound, then it's driving. Tyson with the fade, not the hair, my hands rocking. When I link with ball point, you know it's knocking.
Check 1 2. Can you hear me with the mask on? What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back. It's your boy Blue. We are here in Edinburgh in the UK, northern UK, part of Orbx True Earth. Great Britain North, I believe is what it's called. I got my mask on today, not because I need to, honestly. I'm just my aunt-in-law, my wife's aunt, she's making a bunch of like custom masks. So she's making it for the whole family. She made one for me, my wife, my dad, my mom, everybody. So it's like, you know what? I'll probably show it off for a little bit. I actually kind of like it. It has a dope little black and gray design on it. I really haven't worn it yet. I'm not super paranoid really yet as far as going out in public. But I have one now. At least now I have one to use. But I'm actually not going to wear it for the entire stream because it kind of smells weird. I need to wash it. And it's not very comfortable. So what's going on, guys? Welcome to the stream. Mr. Music, good to see you, my man. Nicholas Bowes, Tanner Costin. Who else we got in here? It's Moon, welcome to the stream. Tanner, Captain K, Simpilot, welcome back. Captain Reynolds, good to see you, my man. Nightbot, finally has the right information. Great. Nightbot, thank you very much. AV Geek, welcome to the stream. Captain Gio, welcome back, my dude. Who else we got in here? Gunten Magdalena, welcome to the stream. Who else is in here, man? Thank you guys so much. I know it's been about 2 weeks since we streamed X-Plane. Mateo Frenza, what's up? Good to see you. Fuzzy, welcome back. KJ Black, good to see you, my man. Welcome to the stream. Braden McNeil, welcome. I think somebody where's my dude at? I think it was Graham or one of you guys showed up. I can't remember who it was, but thank you guys for coming through and hanging out with me. I got a mask made with a bra. It kind of do look like a bra, actually, if you think about it. Like you could probably make a bra out of this, but you know, it's cool that the family's watching out for me, and I don't know when I'm gonna use it or if I'm gonna use it, but I got one if it comes time to need it. So masks are kind of hard to find right now. Most places you'll get a mask from are from people who are actually making them, you know, by hand. So anyways, guys, we got a flight to do today. We're gonna attempt to do 2 legs. We try that pretty often and it doesn't usually work out. We're also testing or stress testing X-Plane 11.5 Beta 3 Vulcan, the Vulcan update. I've been really hesitant on like actually doing it because you know how betas are, they're very unpredictable, very unstable. So I want to put a disclaimer out there right now, let you guys know we may crash at some point during this stream. Probably not physically crash, but X-Plane might crash. We might have some stuttering at some point. We don't know. Again, this is all kind of a test, a live test, I guess you could say, and these always make me nervous because I personally hate troubleshooting. It's not something I enjoy doing. And I would rather just go out, have a good time, and do some fun flying. You know what I mean? What's up, US Airways? Welcome to the stream. Big Mungus, welcome back. Lufthansa 06, what's up, my dude? So yeah, doing some stress testing. We are again in Echo Golf Papa Hotel, Edinburgh. That's I want to really quickly show you guys what my settings are right now and what frames I'm actually getting. We can actually go in the cockpit. We can see I'm getting 24. I'm not sure that actually dropped from when I started. So again, this is exactly why I'm stress testing, to see what frames I'm getting, what I need to be doing. Again, we have the Vulcan update. I do have a link in the description today. I also posted it on my community channel of a video that actually will help boost your frames. So usually I would probably in the Zibo be getting probably around 19 to just probably topping off at 20 frames here in Edinburgh. Not so much because of this scenery, but because we're in True Earth, Great Britain, and I've always had a really hard time with getting frames in True Earth, Great Britain, North, Central, and South, and that's why you don't see me fly in the UK all that much because of that issue. But because Vulcan is now out, I'm hoping that will fix that in some way. So frames are still like in the mid to low 20s, like I'm getting 24. We're gonna be flying to London. Again, I'm kind of doing worst case scenario today. We're streaming. We have plugin. We have Project Fly running. We have all kind of things running in the background. So kind of stress out my machine to the worst case scenario as possible to see what frames we can get. What I need to do with all my settings and things like that. You get so really quick, let's go to my settings page here. You guys can see what my settings are at right now. So my visual effects are at high HDR. My texture quality is at maximum. Anti-aliasing is freaking crazy high. Draw shadows on scenery is on. Number of world objects is on maximum. We have use Vulcan driver and all that kind of stuff turned on. And I don't think I'm going to change it. This is the settings I've been using. I also did a test in LA where I also have I guess you could say a FPS issue out there, where I get pretty low frames out there in LA right now because of the LA scene by Mr. X. But right now I'm getting 30 to 35 frames with these exact settings over there. So I'm kind of bringing the same settings over here and see how they do. Do I need to turn them down and whatnot? I don't really want to change them because I've had an issue where if I change, like for example, my number of objects, Vulcan will just crash and then I have to restart X-Plane. I'm gonna do my best to not have to restart X-Plane at all today. But yeah, Captain Bambosa, man, what's good? What's good? Welcome to the stream. Good to see you, man. I am also running on VATSIM. That is right, Drewski. I'm on VATSIM right now. We're in EGPH, Echo Golf Papa Hotel, in the KLM Zibo 737, the latest updated version from what I understand. And I think this scenery is by Orbx. I just got it like today, so I wanted to try it out. It looks nice. I do like it a lot. But outside of the aircraft right now, we're getting 31 to 32 frames. Yeah. So if I turn it around, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do both flights today. We're gonna try. If I turn this direction, I get 28. So I think it also depends on what you're looking at. I'm really concerned about how it's gonna work in London because London has a lot of buildings. We have our objects on high, our texturing on high. I bet you if I turned off draw shadows, I would probably gain about 5 to 8 frames. Usually when I turn off draw shadows, I gain a whole lot of frames. All right, so we're inside. Inside we're getting 26-ish, 26, 25. I think the IRS should already be aligning. I'm not sure why this screen is still off. Hopefully that comes around. I don't know if let me know, guys, if you know of any like bugs within the Zibo, because I don't know. I'm still kind of testing things out myself. I know the LibRain doesn't work, so that doesn't matter. Yeah, and that's not a bug. Drewski, if your FPS does fall beneath 20 for longer than, I can't remember how many seconds it is, you will get disconnected automatically from VATSIM, which I think is a good thing. It's annoying if you are struggling for frames, but it is technically a good thing. So ground is on here at EGPH on 12175. We can tune into them. 12175. And we can get clearance from them if we like. We don't really have. Well, we technically need to because we're here and we're on VATSIM. What up, XP? Good to see you, man. Welcome to the stream. Glad to see you, man. Thanks for coming through, bro. I'm still trying to figure out why this screen is black because our IRS should have aligned already. I'm gonna go back and check, but I'm pretty sure it did. Let's see. I might have to redo it. I don't know. Get the APU on now while we're waiting. Yeah, we got heading, got nav. I'm gonna go to the line. We'll see, we'll go with it. I don't want to go too far in the setup and then figure out that my IRS didn't align. I'm gonna be super pissed. Crazy Chaz, what's up, man? Fairing fans, good to see you, bro. And we do need fuel, so let's go take a look at sim brief and we'll find out how much fuel we need today. I do like this. Which page is it? There's a page on here that I like a lot. Yeah, is it? No, fuel truck. No, payload. Yeah, so I can just type in my fuel right here. So we need, we'll do 58 block. So 58, oh shoot.
Good afternoon, EG1141 requesting IFR to Gatwick, please.
5,800 kilograms. That's pounds.
EG1141
Hold on.
ground, good afternoon. Clear to London Gatwick.
Hold on, I need to change that to
Charlie departure, runway
kg.
24 and squawk 7404. Squawk 7104, Gosemic 1 Charlie departure. Thank you. EG1141 squawk 7404.
Man, it's been a while since I've flown on VATSIM.
71.
I've been flying on Pilot Edge, but it's been a while since I've flown on VATSIM. Where'd that? Is this it? Fuel required? The 8. 100? Yeah, kilograms. Alright, we'll go ahead and call the fuel truck. There it is. Thank you, Trifix. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate it a lot. Alright, departure. Let's just find out what we're gonna get out here. Let's get an IFR to London. Make sure my button works. I don't know if my button's gonna work. Where we at? Where's this place called?
Good afternoon, Riding 735 on
Edinburgh?
1 Alpha with information Charlie requesting clearance today.
There it is.
My stream so far okay, sign my pops long data.
Oh my god, Trifix. Oh my god. Zeka, hilarious, hilarious. A text to speech. Why am I in Edinburgh? Come to Aberdeen? Because Aberdeen doesn't have really cool scenery. That's why. That's exactly why. I don't like the fact that this is not on. This makes me nervous. Like, these screens should be on already. Right, guys? Shouldn't it be on? I'm gonna reload the blanks. I don't trust it. I don't trust it. I don't trust it. We're gonna reload the plane. I don't trust it, guys. Like, once the IRS aligns, it should give us the regular horizon line and all that kind of stuff. It shouldn't be looking like that. So I don't want to go through, get clearance, get my flight plan ready, all that stuff, and then to find out that freaking Zibo broke me. So we'll go ahead and get it started again. Cold and dark. We didn't get very far anyway, so I'm not really tripping about that. So ground power is on, battery's on. We'll go ahead and turn APU on now. Actually, here's the ground power. All right, now APU is gonna come on. Hey, yo, man, what's up, man? Oh, man, I appreciate that, bro. That means a lot, AVO. I really do appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that, man. Thank you guys who are supporting my music as well. If you didn't know, I am an artist, a music artist. If you want to find my music, you can find me on Spotify, iTunes, or any digital store under the name Archie and Sizzle. Good vibes, man. Just good vibes. All right, we're cruising at hopefully 35,000 feet today. Here comes the APU. That's turned on. Window heat is on. And we'll go get this thing aligned. And let's see if it works this time. I flew the Zibo like Saturday, but that was an older version. I updated just this morning to the version I'm flying now, Echo Golf Papa Hotel. So I don't know, there's been, you know, this is why I don't always update my Zibo every chance I get, because sometimes things break. But I don't know if this is a Zibo thing or what the issue is. So we'll just see what happens. It's gonna take about 7 minutes, I believe, usually, to get it aligned. So we're headed to first leg Echo Golf Lima Lima. That's what's happening today, and then we'll see what happens.
Tronic 728 Bravo, and ground good afternoon.
8 minutes actually.
Stand 1-1 via Alpha.
I forgot, in Europe you gotta tell them what stand you're in and stuff. FMC, put that on progress page. Let's go ahead and turn the nav lights on. We'll get stuff loaded up in here. Payload, we need, I said 58, I think. Crap, I keep thinking I could type with my keyboard in here, but I can't. 5900, that's good enough. Go back to, let's go back. Let's go ahead and load that. And I think we are good to go. Wait, was that pounds that I just put in? Let me check. So I was not paying attention. All right, kilograms, that's what I want. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and get our chart. Oh, I already have it. That's amazing. I don't know what stand we're at. I think we're at stand 9. We'll just say that when we call. And I think we have some, like, what is the, is there an ATIS? Yes, there is an ATIS. 13135. Let's see if we can pick that up. 13135. Spinning, spinning, spinning. 35.
Delta, taxi, Orbx Delta 1. Time 1520. Runway in use 24. Transition level, flight level 70. Surface wind 250. 12 knots. Cab OK. Temperature plus 16. Dew point plus 7. QNH 1019. Acknowledge your receipt of information, Charlie.
Do you ever finish listening to the ATIS and realize that you really were not paying any attention at all? That just happened just now.
Edinburgh information, Charlie.
Edinburgh, is that how you say it? Not Edinburgh, Edinburgh. We have Charlie though.
Runway in use 24.
24?
Transition level, flight level 70.
70.
Surface wind 250. 12 knots. Cab OK. Temperature plus
24 is
16.
our runway.
Dew point plus 7. QNH 1019.
1019.
Acknowledge your receipt of information, Charlie.
We have Charlie. Alright, let's switch back over. Okay, that time I was listening. First time I was not paying attention. Not one freaking bit. Alright, so runway 24 is in use. Altimeter is 1019. We can put that in. And that's here, right? Let's actually switch over to that one. Wait, hold on. How do I switch? I want to be.
This is Charlotte Lima. We're at stand 16. We're an Airbus flight aircraft type of Airbus A319. We have information Charlie. We're just going to see through.
How do I switch it from? Oh, that's not the right button. It's this one over here. Funny. 1019.
Confirm stand 16 or 17.
Did I say ramp 9? Is that what I said, guys? Philly Soft, what's up, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Quarantine's going good. I'm healthy.
Heathrow goes to 1 Charlie departure.
Can't complain.
Runway 24 and score
I'm healthy. My
54,
family's healthy.
73.
That's what's important to me right now. Runway 24. We're supposed to be getting the ghost sack. Let's go and get our clearance. We waited long enough.
Shuttle 8 Lima, correct.
Edinburgh. Ah, yep, it's not working. Hold on. Hold on. I think I reset. Because I've been using Pilot Edge, so my joystick button, I think, is wrong.
Yes, taxi, Holomite Delta 1, Foxtrot and Alpha.
Actually, I think it is working. Alright, we want this to do nothing. Whenever you're using VATSIM, you want contact ATC to do nothing. If you're on Pilot Edge, you want to make sure it actually does something. I'm gonna hit apply, hit done, and then go ahead and call.
Unicom, monitor, sorry, no for agency, monitoring Unicom, 122 decimal, and 99, bye-bye.
Edinburgh, ground, KLM 116, IFR to London with Charlie.
KLM 116, Edinburgh ground, good afternoon, report standard aircraft type.
We're at 737, and I believe we're at ramp 9.
KLM 116, clear to London Heathrow, go some 1 Charlie departure, runway 24, and score 3370.
Clear to London, Heathrow via the Gosa 1 Charlie. Expecting runway 24. Squawking 3370. KLM 116.
KLM 116, correct.
Beautiful. Alright, we got a clearance.
1 for Delta, and you have my son.
We'll put in our squawk before I forget. It's gonna be 33. What was it again? Man, my memory's horrible. 33. 70. Alright, we'll leave that off. On standby. Departure. He basically gave us the exact same flight plan, so we're not worried about that. GoSac 1 Charlie. We go to route. Okay, activate. Execute. Execute. Next page. And now we get to put in all of our airways, because that's fun. That's my favorite thing about flying in Europe is all the airways you guys have. Alright, so GOSM, and our first airway is going to be Papa 600. Is it an airway? Or is that a waypoint? Let's see if it's an airway. That sounds like a waypoint. Papa 600. That is an airway. Okay. And then Foxtrot Echo November India Kilo. Finnick. And then uniform Lima 612. That's an airway. Lakey. Lima, Alpha, Kilo, Echo, Yankee. Our flight's gonna be pretty short today. It's only like an hour. Airtime. And November uniform. Golf Romeo Alpha, Nugra. That's direct. Execute that. Arrival. We have the B and N 1 Bravo, which is this one right here. And we'll expect like 27 left. I don't know. I'm just gonna assume 27 left. It might be 27 right. I don't know where they land in London. I don't fly to London. Aviocian Oscar, what's up? Good to see you. Frontier, what's up, man? I forgot to say hi to you earlier. Welcome to the stream as well, man. We'll just do 27 left. Sure. B&N. Sure. I don't know. Route. If we have ATC, hopefully we'll get vectors. We probably won't because we're in Europe and they like to do RNAV. But that's okay. We'll make it happen. We'll make it too. Alright, I think the fuel should be good to go. Reserves, we'll just put 1.6 because that's what I do. That's made up. That's not a real number. Cost index 99er because we want to go fast. And then 3550 is what I have filed. Anyone limit? Oh, this looks good. Oops, did I hit it twice? All right, flaps would be 5. Center of gravity, let's see what that is. 4.5 is our trim. 114, 115, 130. And that'll be it for that page. Go down the legs and we'll double check some things. Let's go to plan. And I'll just step through it, make sure it looks legit. Alright, that actually looks really legit. It's gonna have us flying right over London, downtown London, which is gonna be amazing. And hopefully we can get over London with something higher than 25, 30 frames, you know? Hopefully, we'll see what happens. So I'm still having that issue. What's going on with this? What's going on with this? I think it should be done. No, we have 1 more minute. Okay, we'll see what happens. Flight plan is done. We're basically ready to push. I did update my better pushback. Somebody was telling me that it is now working on Vulcan, so I went ahead and re-downloaded it. It's the one Charlie. That's what we're getting. Let's do our best not to get yelled at today. Last time we flew on X-Plane, I think we got yelled at on Pilot Edge, which is pretty funny. Very thankful for that opportunity. Oh god. All right, EGLL. That's our next. While we're waiting for the IRS, and we'll get an arrival, which was BNN. There it is, BNN 1 Bravo. We'll brief all that in a little while. And then approach. We might get 27 left. We might get 27 right. I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows. Yeah, even though we're getting 24 frames, 24, 25 frames right now, that's better than I would have been getting without Vulcan. Because my settings are actually very high for the amount of detail that is in this area. Hopefully it raises once we get airborne. We'll see what happens. Again, I'm stress testing, and I don't want to actually change my settings because I'm scared X-Plane's going to crash. So we're going to leave it where it's at. I'm trying to find a benchmark, a place to start. So we're here, selecting runway 24. IRS should be done. It is. Beautiful. It's working perfectly. I'm going to turn the main panel light on a little bit. So we'll turn on this light. Squawking 13370. We're ready to push, guys. Let's go let everybody know what's going on. PA system, welcome aboard.
Ryanair 735 requesting taxi.
Morning, folks, from the flight deck. Get your captain for the ride. It looks like
Ryanair 735 taxi.
So, planning on a smooth
via
ride.
Echo
As soon as we
Alpha.
can, and as safe as we can. We'll talk to you once we get airborne.
Holding point today. Delta 1 via Echo and Alpha.
Alright, it's called Better Pushback.
Ground to cockpit. Please show me where you want to go.
We're going to go that way. This airport is nice. They did a good job with the modeling at this airport, to be honest with you. Really good job.
Show 80 request taxi.
Go right around here. And I always like the guy to pull us back forward so we don't get in the way in case somebody's next to us. Apparently there's a few people here. I don't see them.
Ground to cockpit. Tow is driving up.
Because we're on ground control. We're not on tower or anything like that. I don't see any other planes here. Even though I hear them. Is there an issue with X-Pilot in the CSLs or something like that? I don't know. Look at that PBR. That's nice. Really clear day today. Javion Johnson, what's up, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream, bro. Welcome back. Graham says yesterday we had an issue with ETS, and today he's predicting we'll lose an engine. Hopefully not. I'm not prepared for an engine failure at all. Alright, transition today is 7,000. Yeah, set in the ATIS.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect.
We'll climb out of here about 210. And we'll take a look at the chart to find out what our departure actually says. G-Man, what's up, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Richard, welcome from Florida. Good to see you, dude. Welcome to the stream, man. I think we're ready to go. Yes, yes, yes. We are ready to go. All right, let's get some things ready up ahead, up above. We never turn our packs on because that's not important to have AC. I don't even know what the temperature is out here. Beacon, let's get the beacon on. That is this one? Yeah. We'll turn the seatbelt signs on.
So connected and bypass pinning circuit. Release parking brake.
We'll do. Stand by. We'll leave the packs off. We're at the end anyways. Utimus. Alright, let's go ahead and get our pushback clearance. Push and start clearance out of ramp. I think we're at ramp 9. Let's see. There's no number. Is there? Yeah, 9. We're at 9. Alright, cool. Edinburgh ground, KLM 16, ready for push and start with Charlie 737.
KLM 16, stand 9, push and start, approved, face east.
Stand by, push and start, approved, facing east, KLM 16. Alright, beautiful. East is what direction? Let's find out. East. Okay, yeah, so north is northeast.
Right,
Alright, park and brake released.
starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Preface.
If you're
North and be aware of Concord on the right.
Flight attendant first at this time.
Push start preface north
For
of
those
Castle
customers seated in a
Concord,
row,
running
please designate as an exit row. We do should please take out the safety information card found in the seat pocket in front of you. Read the front of the card. If you're unwilling or unable to perform the actions that may be required of you at any time during the flight without injury to yourself, please notify the flight attendant for proceeding at this time. Use of approved personal electronic devices is permitted while the boarding door is open. Just prior to closing the door, we'll advise you when to turn off and stow all large portable electronic devices. You may continue to use your small lightweight devices as long as they are turned and not.
Wingview Wednesday, guys.
Please prepare your doors for departure. Cross-check standby for all.
Brought to you by KLM. I should be able to see him. Yeah, I'll take a look, Reynolds, because there's people here. Because people talking on ground, asking for taxi and IFR clearance. So I know some people are here. I'm just not seeing anything. Matter of fact, I'm gonna take a look at the project fly map real quick and see for sure, see if anybody's on the ground around us. And we do have 3 other aircraft around us. We have 1 taxiing and 2 at the gate. So we should be seeing people, but we don't. So it must be some kind of issue with my own multiplayer. Let's go and get the engine started. They've already said their thing. Fuel pumps are on. And starting engine 2.
Shuttle 8 Alpha, you're still not in my airspace. Contact me when you are on ground. 122.8.
Headphones on, again. Engines are starting up. There's 14%, 16, 19, and 20. Introducing fuel.
That can take you there.
Zoe, thank you.
For making the journey with us.
Thank you.
And now we'd like you to pay attention to the following safety video.
First, please fasten your seatbelt. To fasten your seatbelt, insert the metal fitting into the buckle and pull on the loose end of the strap to tighten. To open, lift up on the buckle.
We recommend you keep your seatbelt fastened at all times, as turbulence can occur unexpectedly.
Alright, sounds like we have 1 good engine. It's actually stabilizing now. And we'll go and start up engine number 1. I think I have a view over there too.
U.S. law requires passengers to comply with all signs and crew member instructions about seatbelt.
Renee, we're headed to London first stop. And if we have time, we may stop by Amsterdam.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Thank you. Park brake set.
Please refer to the safety
Disconnecting toes. Stand by.
Keep in mind the close.
Bat Pino, welcome back, my man. Always bringing the wine and cheese, man. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Always good to see you, bro. Alright, I think it's time to put some fuel in this thing. Here we go.
Also be used as routes. This aircraft has escape path lighting in the aisle. Red lights or an exit sign will indicate you have reached an exit.
This is my favorite. This is one of my favorite parts of the flight. Is engine start, engine start, engine shut down, takeoff, and landing. Those are my favorite parts. I like cruise too. It depends on what we're flying, I guess. Alright, she's looking nice. Just add some flaps now.
Quickly reach for the nearest mast and pull down firmly to start the flow of oxygen. Put the yellow cuff over your
Alpha Simmer, what's up, man? Good to see you. Matter of fact, bro, Alpha Simmer, what's up, dude? I shared your video on my community page, and it's in the description, guys. Big thanks to Alpha Simmer. He has a video out that shows you how to optimize your frames on X-Plane 11 using the NVIDIA control panel. So thank you, man, for that video. I really do appreciate that. I couldn't have explained it better myself. So I used that to help me, myself, in my own sim, and it's actually helped a lot. So thank you very much, man.
Remove the vest from the package like this. Put the vest
Alright,
over your
real quick
head.
flight control check.
Wrap the strap around your waist and attach the buckle. Pull the loose end of the strap to
Looking
tighten.
good.
Once outside.
Beautiful. Alright, we got 2 good engines, guys. Turn the generators on, because I always forget that step. You guys remember last time I forgot to turn the generators on. Alright, pack's coming on too. Set that to auto. Probe heat. Yaw damper. Hydraulics. Alright, lights coming on. And now we go ahead and turn the APU off. AP bleed off. Runway turn off. On. Taxi lights on. Flaps already down. We are ready to go. Brakes released. Wait, we actually gotta get taxi clearance. I forgot we're online. I forgot we're online. I'm gonna set this RTO, and we'll go ahead and get taxi clearance from Edinburgh if they're still on. Is he still here? He might have logged off. It's definitely possible he could have logged off. I didn't hear him. I think he might have said it while we were gone, because it's gotten quiet. Yeah, he is gone. Okay, cool. So we'll just taxi then. And we'll use the radio. Like it's uncontrolled airport. Wait, we're not even on Unicom. So 122.8. Welcome back to VATSIM in an unpredictable time when controllers are going to be on. Alright, we'll squawk. All that good stuff. Park brake release, let's go. Edinburgh traffic KLM 116 taxiing to runway 24 Edinburgh. Yes. No, Captain Geo, this is EGPH. This is Edinburgh. Not EGHI. This is not Southampton. I like it though. Yeah, I hear somebody else taxiing as well, but again, I can't see them. That's weird. Again, I haven't tried VATSIM since I've done Vulcan, and I've only had Vulcan installed since like the weekend, so I've been testing it offline. I'll take a look at my frames right now. Frames right now are 25, 26, so not like great at all. I mean, I would definitely want to be a 30. I'm thinking if I fly out in Europe, I'm probably going to have to turn my settings down a little bit, maybe either my texture down. Right now I'm running texturing to at a maximum. It's probably never a good idea to go maximum, but I am. It was working for me. Like if I was flying outside of Orbx regional area, I did a flight in a TBM yesterday or the day before in Italy and Spain, and I was running the exact same settings I'm running right now, and I was getting like 70 frames. But that's in the TBM, and that's in a place that's not Orbx, so it's a bit different of a situation. Alright, we're gonna basically be able to roll out right here. I'm sorry I can't see this guy, so I don't know where he is. Like there's no name tags or anything, so I might hit him. I have to look at the project fly map. I think there's no one in front of me, so I think we're good to go. Alright, let's get ready for takeoff. We'll use LNAV. And we'll brief our departure too, because that's something we haven't done. Something I gotta
Aircraft in front, just one right there behind.
Roger, thank you. For some reason I can't see anyone. Am I actually coming through? Because I'm hearing an echo. I was only taxiing 24 knots. Yeah, so he should be like right there, but he's not. I'm also missing traffic global. I miss all the traffic in the 4 airports. I do. Alright, put the parking brake real quick. We're gonna watch, take a look at our departure. Taking off 24, that's to the left, go some 1 Charlie, Edinburgh, at above 6,000 and below 23,000. From there, we'll continue. I think we need to continue at 6,000. It looks like all the way to Gosum. Yeah, so that's what our departure looks like for 1 Charlie, I believe. Airport elevation is 136. All right, so 6,000. We'll set that, and we'll try to do this legitly. Parking brake release, wing lights, strobes, land lights, taxi lights off, runway turn offs off. Good gas. Edinburgh traffic, KLM 116 taking off runway 24. Edinburgh. Inspector, what's up, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream as well. G-Man Dukes, welcome back. Alright, guys, you know what time it is. Headphones on. What updates are you talking about, Reynolds?
Holding short at Delta 3.
You know, I almost flew Ryanair today, but they don't fly this route. Alright, here we go. Let's pull them up.
knots.
Rotate.
Positive green.
Cure it. Bye bye. Oh, hello. Ay, my. Oh man.
1,000.
Oh man. All right, gears up. Turn them off. That is nice. That is nice. Like, stuff like this gets me excited for Microsoft Flight Simulator. 'Cause I'm like, if Orbx can do this, and hopefully Microsoft Flight Simulator will be like this by default, how much better is it gonna get? Happy Wing View Wednesday, guys. That's a screenshot right there. Oh man. All right, auto throttle. We're gonna go ahead and arm that. We're climbing to 6,000. We're following the flight director, following the magenta line, and another wing view. Oh, hello. Oh, hello. Like, it's just farms, but like, why do farms get? I think the only people that are excited about farms are people who like farm simulators and people who fly flight simulators. They like seeing realistic looking farms. Alright, we're still flying it by hand. We'll go ahead and continue flying it by hand for a while. We'll be on autopilot for the majority of the flight, so might as well have some fun with it. Alright, flaps coming up all the way. And here comes 6,000. And I'm actually going to try flying that by hand, even at 6,000 feet. Oh, there's a speed. Let's bring that back. We speed getting out of hand. I thought that auto throttle was on. I guess not. There's no speed restriction except for the regular below 10,000, so we'll put it at 250 knots. And then we'll add some trim so we don't have to fight the yoke. A bit too much. That works right there. We can go outside. We're airborne with about 27, 28 frames now. Alright, now we're going too high. I think auto throttle added power and it messed up my trim. So I'm just gonna go on autopilot. We'll just do that.
1,000 to go.
There we go. So don't worry about it. We can just fly. We can just enjoy the view. We'll go standard. Overhead will stay the same. Edward, which add-on planes already work on Vulcan? I honestly do not know the answer to that question. Somebody else in chat might, though. So if anybody in chat, if you guys know what planes already work with Vulcan, please let us know, because I would like to know too. Right now, I've only tested the Zibo and a few GA planes. That's all I think I've tested. Zibo seems to work pretty good so far, as well as the TBM works great. So TBM is a really good one. I love those what the heck do you call those things? Wind fans? Very cool. I forgot the flight director. Thank you for reminding me. No, it is on. Flight director's on. Oh, I forgot the right side flight director. But the flight director's on. But thank you though for the heads up. Wind turbines, that's how you say it. I always forget what they call them. I remember we had a long-going joke with a friend of mine when we went on a road trip. They have some of these out in Texas too, and I forgot what he called them. He called it something else. It was hilarious. Gorgeous out here though in northern UK. You should. That would be a good idea, Starly, to add a Vulcan command people know, because a lot of people are asking, what is Vulcan? What is Vulcan? And I don't really know how to explain it either. I can send you a video of something that tells you what it does, but I honestly don't know how to explain what Vulcan is. What up, Christopher? Good to see you, man. Milton 12, what's up? Welcome back, bro. I actually kind of like this low-level flying. You get a really good view of all the scenery. So as far as like performance right now, even though we are at 20, we're in the low 20s honestly right now on frames. I have, again, if you weren't here to begin the stream, I have my texture quality set to maximum. I have visual effects set to high, which is HDR. I have my anti-aliasing maximum, which is freaking nuts. I have my my objects, I think, set to the highest setting, and then I have reflection detail like off. So pretty high settings that I'm running right now, and I'm getting 23 right now, 23 frames. So honestly, not great. So really, realistically, to make it run the smoothest, I would need to turn those settings down in an area like this with so much detail. And I can probably get a good 30-35 frames. It probably, honestly, if I just turn off draw shadows, I'll probably get some really good frames just by turning that off. But I don't want to I don't want to crash a stream. I've done some tests off stream, and whenever I changed like the amount of buildings that was showing up, I would have an issue and it would just crash, and I don't want to crash. I would at least finish one flight before we change any settings. I would like to do that, but I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot of issues flying into London today, because London, I've always had a problem flying to London with all the detail, all the scenery that's out there, all the buildings and all that stuff like that. With my settings being so high, if I'm having trouble out here in the country, I can't imagine how bad it's gonna be in London. So we'll see what would happen. This is why I'm calling it stress testing today, because I really want to see what is the extent that I can push my computer and my sim with Vulcan at its current state. Again, this is still in beta, so it could improve, or it can stay the same. I don't know. So, but right now, this is freaking beautiful. Like, I'm okay with getting mid 20 frames if it looks this good. And honestly, like, the stuttering has definitely been like toned down quite a lot in the Vulcan version. I remember in my before, it always really bothered me how freaking like stuttery it would be. Even if you're getting like 60 frames, you would still get those stutters. But now you still get them from time to time, a little bit. You can see it, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. And this is gorgeous. Jesus. Inspector Mallory, I'll see you next time. Thanks for coming through. Really appreciate it. Bailey, this is the 737-800. And can you guys hear me okay? Or is the engine too loud? Let me know. Inspector, you say you run the demo like 3 frames on low graphics, so your computer is good. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard, man. Yogo, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the Blue Arrow Royal family, guys. Again, if you just joined us, we are flying the Royal Dutch Airlines KLM 737-800 Zibo. We just took off out of Edinburgh. Echo Golf Papa Hotel. Let's take a flight. Look at our flight. I think we've already passed that waypoint where we could go above 6,000. Yep, there it is right there. So we can go ahead and climb to our cruise at 35,000 feet. So let's go make that happen. Alright, they're 350. I'm going to use... Let's see if VNAV works for me. It hasn't worked in a long time. Nope, it's not going to work. Alright, whatever. I don't care. Screw you, Zibo. No, okay, not Zibo. Screw you, plane. We'll just do vertical speed for now, and we'll climb at like 2,500. Let's do 28. We'll keep it at 250 because we're still below 10,000 feet, and we'll probably switch it up to flight change mode once we get above 10,000 feet. Is there a flight change mode? Level change is what I meant to say. I'm used to the GA planes have flight change modes. A lot of the business jets. Wing View Wednesday. Look at those fans. I'm a big fan, guys. I'm a big fan. Millie, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Hello. Christopher, still waiting for your computer? Excited for you, man. YDG, you've been running Vulcan with triple screens for about a week. It's fantastic. Very big difference. Definitely. I agree. I agree. I've been really. I did my perf stuff. My perf stuff is done. I was really against trying Vulcan at first, and the reason was because it was in beta, and I knew that beta always has problems. It has crashes, it has issues, stuff like that, and I didn't want to deal with it. I can't even get to my perf page anymore. Where's my perf page? I can't remember how to get to it when I'm in flight. I'll just leave it, whatever. We're good. I don't. Who needs VNav? I'm a freaking pilot. Yeah, I was against flying with Vulcan for the longest time, like the last 2 weeks. Mainly again because it's so unstable, because it's in beta and it's unpredictable. You never know. So it could crash right now. We don't know. But this last beta 3 version has been working pretty good for me. It hasn't been too bad. And even though I'm not getting as high of frames as I thought I would, as I hoped I would, I'm still definitely getting significantly better frames than I was getting before. And that's a huge thing. Like now I'm actually able to enjoy a lot of these flights a little bit more than I did before. All right, we're above 10,000 feet. We're gonna do a couple things and turn the landing lights off. I'll turn the wing lights, wing well lights off, logo lights off. I think those are already off. Yeah, they're already off. Everything else up there will stay the same. I think our seatbelt signs are already on. We'll listen to the announcement. I think I executed Geo. I may have not. It's definitely possible.
Also remember to use caution when opening overhead bins, as items may have shifted during the flight. We've now reached an altitude where it is safe to use approved electronic devices. Please be reminded that FIDA regulations prohibit the use of cellular network services during the flight. After the meal service, duty-free sales will begin. The catalog in your seat pocket describes the merchandise available today. We accept all major credit cards, US dollars, and other currencies for duty-free purchases. Due to security regulations, we'd like to remind you about restrictions to carry on baggage containing liquids, gels, or creams.
He talked so slow like he forgot what he was supposed to say. Anyways, let me answer a few of these questions. Let me go back a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if I executed Geo. Millie, I will definitely be trying out Flight Simulator when it comes out. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it'll meet all of our expectations. Starly, I also don't know why X-Plane didn't update the Vulcan earlier. It took them a long time to do it too, but it was definitely something that's needed. Again, OpenGL is a very old system, and it was necessary, absolutely necessary. Tay Ray, what's up? It's your birthday today. Well, happy birthday to you. What is your question? YDG, you've only had one crash. That was with the Fokker 50. Since then, you haven't been able to open it since then. I haven't tried that plane yet. Edward, which add-on planes do I have? I have a lot. I don't think I can even list all the planes that I have because I have a ton. I have a lot. I probably have like 50 gigabytes of planes in my X-Plane folder. It's pretty crazy. Most of them are like different various types of GA planes. Of course, I got the Zibo. Of course, I got the TOS A321, the A319, the Flight Factor A320, the Flight Factor 767, 777, 757. I got the A330 by JAR. I got the 747. I got the X-Craft ERJ family. Bunch of stuff. I got a lot of planes, man. I can't really list them all. Bailey, we'll see how long this flight takes us today. I do have a second flight prepared to go to Amsterdam from London, but that depends on how long it takes us to get to London. If we have any hiccups along the way, if we get there quickly, how it goes with ATC, stuff like that. So I have a second flight prepared. I would prefer to be able to do that, but if not, this may be our only flight. So we'll see. I'm not gonna make any promises I can't keep today. Anders, you're doing a flight from EGPH to EGCC. Nice, man. Where is that? What is EGCC? I don't remember what airport that is. Are you the Ryanair behind me? I think you are. No, not 15, like 50 gigabytes of planes. It might not be that many, but it's a lot. Like, matter of fact, I have so many add-on planes for X-Plane that I archive them now. Like, I take them off of my machine and I put them in a backup drive because I just don't have enough space on my computer. All right, we'll switch to level change mode. We're passing 21,000 feet. We're already in standard, and we're gonna climb, looking for like 278. We'll do 280. So with level change, the aircraft is gonna pitch now for 280 knots, and it'll maintain the best, I guess, climb speed at 280, or sorry, the best vertical speed for 280. So we should see the plane nose down, which it is right now, getting close to the horizon. And you can see our speed climbing up to 280. Once it gets to 280, it'll nose up again, and then it'll do its best to climb to 35,000 feet at 280. We might have to lower it to get a better vertical speed. We'll see what happens. All right, overhead is good. They've already done the announcement, and it's pretty calm out here. Winds are not too bad. Not too bad. Turbulence flying over northern UK. Beautiful wing views today. Very nice weather, actually. Like, it's super clear. It's not overcast, not nasty, not rainy, none of that. Yeah, 50 gigabytes of planes. I said that. No, I do not have any panels for any of my simulators. I don't have one for X-Plane or Truck Sim or Train Sim. Probably, I don't really look into getting one. Edward, thank you for the subscription. Welcome to the Blue Arrow family. Greatly appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. But yeah, I don't really have any panels. I'm not really interested right now. I mean, it would probably be pretty cool, but I'm not really interested. For Train Sim, I don't really think it's necessary, even though you could do that. For a trucking simulator, you could definitely do that, and it definitely could do it for Flight Sim, but I'm more interested in other things than spending my money at other places than making a panel right now for myself. But I think they're pretty cool. Philly Soft, you're flying from Honolulu, I think is what that is, to LAX in a United A250 or A350, did you mean? Either way, that's crazy. That's dope. That's a long flight. It's like a 4, 5 hour, 6 hour flight from Honolulu to LAX. John, what up, man? Thank you for the subscription as well. Welcome to the Blue Arrow family. I hope you guys are staying safe out there, staying healthy. Definitely been praying for you guys, you know, for the subscribers, for the people who watch, people who support me as well. This is a whole world, you know. It's a crazy time we're living in right now. Like, who would have thought this is what 2020 would look like? You know, lots of events being canceled, a lot of stuff going on. It's crazy, man. Again, I'm thankful that I have a job, to do. Last week, I was not able to stream. Again, I mentioned this in my stream yesterday. I wasn't able to stream as much as I wanted to because I had so much work. But again, I'm thankful for that work. 'Cause I know some people are struggling, you know, with their small businesses, or struggling getting laid off, or having a job in general. So I got to be thankful for all the work that I get right now. Yesterday, we did Euro Truck Simulator. It was so much fun, man. If you're into trucks, definitely check out our next Truckin' Tuesday. Probably do it next Tuesday. So much fun driving through Iceland, through the snow and some heavy trucks. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. Gatwick, thank you, Gio. Gatwick, or Manchester. He says Manchester, not Gatwick. All right, Philly's in the A350. Gotcha. Sim pilot flying from CDW to Boston. Very nice. What are you flying? What plane are you flying? Infinite Captain has Zibo and a Tolos A319. You don't need 50 gigabytes of planes. You don't. You guys know I do a lot of reviews, so that's one of the reasons I have so many planes, because I do review a lot of them. At least in the last a year. I think a year ago I started making reviews, and so since then I've been buying and getting. I've been buying and receiving. I haven't paid for them all, but I've been buying and receiving a lot of planes to fly and review and to stream, and things like that. But it's good. You don't need that many planes. Like, I don't fly them all that often. That's why I was saying I have an archive where I zip them up, I put them in a backup, I take them out of my X-Plane folder so that they don't take up space. Oh no, Milton 12, you can't get your Microsoft to work? That sucks, bro. When is the next Infinite Flight stream? I don't know. I don't have a date right now. Again, I haven't given up streaming it forever. I'll be back. I mentioned yesterday I may return sometime around when the 777 update comes up. So we'll see. We'll see how I feel about that. This is, man, these views on the wing view. We'll live right here for a little while because this looks nice. 2020 gave you a whole month vacation, so my next vacation will be Flight Sim Expo. Man, it's crazy. I do have the Bombardier Dash 800 by FlyJ Sim. I'm looking forward to the new one that they're making. It was supposed to come out this year. I don't know when we're gonna get it. I really haven't been flying the old one because I liked it, but it's out of date. I know they updated, I'm not sure. I need to come back to American Truck Simulator. Yeah, I do. I've been driving. I just haven't been streaming it. I've only been streaming Euro Truck. Not against streaming American Truck Simulator. I just don't have enough people to drive with me to do American Truck Sim right now. Dang, Bailey, you didn't go out for 3 weeks because of the virus? When you finally got outside and rode your bike, you fell off and broke your wrist. Oh, bad luck for you. The trucking stream is usually around this time on Tuesday as of now, but I might not. I might throw a random one in there. Like I'm thinking about doing some trucking tomorrow. I kind of want to finish that Iceland trip we did, because we didn't get to finish it. So we'll see. I'm not want to say too much because I might not do it. Usually Thursdays I kind of focus on driving or racing, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. Speaking of driving and racing, wait, hold on. Let's come back to that. I was supposed to stream DCS World today. I want to mention why I did not stream DCS World. So DCS World is supposed to have the super carrier update today, and what that means is basically an aircraft carrier with a lot of extra fun stuff on it. The current aircraft carriers on DCS World are pretty cool. They have a launch. You're able to do be able to launch off the carrier and land on the carrier. Some of you guys have seen me do that before. You can reload in the carrier. All that stuff is cool. But they're adding like AI, like little static AI people that actually direct you to the catapult, and a lot of cool new features to the super carrier. And it was supposed to release today, but for whatever reason, I think they had some bugs that they needed to fix that were not able to be fixed in time, and so they're delaying the release of the DCS super carrier to probably later this month, early next month. So it sucks for all of us DCS fans out there who are looking forward to it, because I was really looking forward to that. I'm definitely enjoying this, but I would definitely be enjoying flying DCS as well. I've been playing a lot of DCS the last 2 weeks, by myself and with friends, and are we at 35,000? I speed up. And with friends, and I've been getting better familiar with the F-18 and the systems, the weapons, and how to drop them, and it's been a lot of fun. Doing some of you guys saw the video. Did I do a video? Yeah, video I posted on Instagram, and some pictures I posted on Instagram, and been really enjoying that. So I'm looking forward to it, but gotta wait a little bit longer. But it is what it is. That's what happens. Rather than release a bugless finished product than something that's broken and we all get upset and mad, and it would look really bad on DCS. Nice. After LAX, you're flying to Dallas. Nice. Very nice, man. Logan, what's up, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. You just got done flying a Dash 8. Speaking of Dash 8s. Robin, you must have an amazing computer if Vulcan only gave you 3 frames and you were already running Max before. So that's great. That's amazing. I mean, it did help a little bit, but it sounds like you got it down. We need to take notes from you and how you got Max everything already. Gio, you still got your wheels up? Gotcha. What do I think about flight yokes? Maybe an option for you. Yes, flight yokes are an option for me. They're just kind of out of my price range. Like, I wouldn't mind having the, what's it called? The honeycomb yoke or any of the yokes. Right now all I have is a Thrustmaster T16000 joystick, which I use for both X-Plane and for DCS. I think the reason I like the joystick option is because I can fly a plane that has a yoke, but I can also fly like a helicopter. I can also fly a fighter jet, and that's one of the reasons why when I chose to buy a something for flight sim, I was like, let me get a joystick, because a yoke will be good, but I won't really be able to fly a jet with a yoke. I can't really fly a helicopter with a yoke, and those are things that I do. So it was kind of higher priority for me to get a joystick than to get a yoke. But if I do, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind having one. Yes. Frijolito, what up? Very amazing view. You have an i99,000K 2080 Ti. That all sounds like a NASA computer to me. That's amazing, Robin. That's good. I have a 1080 Ti, which I think you have double that. What about killing people with tanks with a tank simulator, aka GTA 5? Right now, GTA 5 is a flying broom with missile simulator right now. If you're flying around in that little hovercraft, which I freaking hate, man. I hate that stupid thing. It's so freaking annoying. The Aircraft Pro, what's up, man? ETE, what is our ETE right now? ETE is currently 26 minutes to London Heathrow. We're making really good time. We are currently flying over, I don't know where we are actually. We're not far north of Lancaster, if anybody knows where that is. And we shouldn't have any ATC until we get to London. We may have London Center, and then as usual, London Approach. we'll see. Last time we flew to London, we got yelled at when we were flying GA through the freaking Class Bravo or Class Charlie, whatever they call it out there. It was horrible. Whole replay. When am I gonna fly the King Air 350 again? I don't know. That's a good question. Alpha Simmer, I'm using Xpilot as my VATSIM client. It is my preferred way right now, anyways. I haven't tried the new updated Squawk Box, and I strayed away from, what was the other one called? It's the one newer right before Xpilot. I can't remember the name, but I strayed away from that one. I didn't like it. Logan, you're in the Baron right now at Key West. Man, I love Key West. I love the Orbx scenery at Key West. Love it, love it. Alexander, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream, bro. Welcome to the stream. Let's get some vibes going in the background. How about that? We'll play. I don't know what this is, but we're just gonna play it. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Oh yeah, something I wanted to talk about. Speaking of driving earlier, Formula 1 2020 was just announced right before we started streaming, and or the game, Formula 1 2020, the game was announced right before we started streaming, and I reposted on my Instagram as well. So if you haven't seen it on there, it's on mine too. And bro, I don't know if I'm excited, obviously, because it's Formula 1 and it's the game. I love 2019, and it can only get better from there. It sounds like right now they're really promoting being able to create your own team and be the 11th team on the Formula 1 grid. Now that makes me wonder, are they adding on to the current 10 teams, I guess? Is it just gonna be like was it 20, is it 20 cars? 20 car grid instead of a 22 car grid instead of 20? I don't know, it's weird. But either way, I'm excited for it. I was kind of wondering about it since, racing, in every form has been postponed and everything's basically virtual right now. How are they going to go forward with the Formula 1 2020 game? Because there's a lot of new tracks this year, like the Vietnam Grand Prix. There's a new Grand Prix, I think, in Amsterdam or somewhere, something like that. But yeah, I'm definitely going to play it. Absolutely. I'll probably pre-order it. I hope I can get part of the beta this year. Last year, I applied to be a part of beta for Formula 1 2019. I didn't make it, but it's okay. Hopefully I can get on this year. But absolutely excited. I'm a huge race fan, and right now is a huge time for racing and e-racing. So iRacing is popping right now, guys. Like, all the real drivers are driving. There's tons of events on TV. Lando Norris is doing, him and Max Verstappen. A lot of other drivers are playing iRacing, playing Formula 1 2019, doing a lot of stuff. So it's been a good time. Been really enjoying watching these guys see how they deal with esports. It's been pretty cool. Milton 12, my favorite aircraft currently is a 787. KLM Zibo 1, what's up, man? Good to see you. Welcome to the stream. This is your plane. AVA8er, what's up? Welcome to the stream as well. Repping KLM today. Yes, I'm very excited about that. Formula 1 2020. And our ETE now is 23 minutes, as we are not far from Manchester now. And let's get a real quick Vulcan update. Let's see. 30. I'm knocking on the door of 31 frames right now in the rotating view over Orbx, which is okay. That's probably 8 to 5 frames better than I would be doing at cruise over top of Orbx in the Zibo. Yeah, I fly Airbus. We spent like a whole month actually flying Airbuses, and since then I was like, we're not flying Airbus for a while. I was like, no more Airbus. I gotta give it a break. I think it was around the time when the Tolas A321 came out, and before that too, because we had the Black Friday sale or some sale, that went on, and I had just got the A319. Had the new sound pack came out for us, so we flew that a lot, and then we flew the 21. So one issue though, I will say, and I'm not seeing it right now, surprisingly. Let's go to the regular outside view. Hold on. If you notice this in Vulcan, and it's not happening. I don't know if it's because we're in Orbx scenery or what, but usually one of the issues right now with Vulcan that I've noticed has been like the scenery being blurry around you. So once you get up to cruise and you're like really high, if you look off in the distance, you'll see really blurry texturing of the ground. Even if you're using like Ortho 4XP, I think I just hit the oh, I hit the gear button. Back up. Oh no. Uh-oh. I hate when I do that. I need to like have I need to put like a big freaking lock on that button because I always hit it on accident. I want you to go up. Please. Oh no. Alright, go down first and then we'll bring you back up. But I was saying though that the scenery gets blurry and it's not happening right now, so I'm surprised. This is probably breaking a lot of rules. Hopefully they come back in. You can do it. Oh no. Oh no. Alright, up please. There we go. There we go. It looks nice, but yeah, we don't want those out at this altitude, at this speed. We're going Mach 0.8 right now. Why do we want the gear out? Like that's gotta, I mean, we might have an issue when we land. All right, where's the top of the descent? We shouldn't be too far from it. All right, actually it's coming up pretty soon. Top of the descent is in 46 miles. We'll be going down to 9,000 BNN. Take a look at our arrival. We have 46 miles to go. We're probably not on it yet. Here's BNN over here, just north of Heathrow. Oh yeah, look at that. We're at 20 frames. And now we're getting the notification we may get kicked from VATSIM because our frames are too low. I'm honestly expecting it to happen. This is, again, the reason why I'm doing this test flight. I want to see what our frames do, how the computer handles it flying into Heathrow. As we get closer, it's going to be loading all that Heathrow scenery. And that stuff is very hard on the machine. So here's Nugra. This is what we're about to cross right now. That's our top of the descent. And I don't really see any like altitude restrictions. Yep, there it is. I think we just got kicked from VATSIM. Oh well, we couldn't see anybody anyways. So I'll probably have to do another test into Heathrow later and just find out what the sweet spot is for my my settings to get in there without dropping below. Honestly, I would like to get into Heathrow above 30 frames. Like 20 is not like, that's not what I'm looking for. So we're doing I think we're doing a BNN 1 Charlie, right? That's the one we have for today. We may do the second leg, we'll see. We still gotta watch the replay. The Heathrow, the Amsterdam leg is pretty short though. Actually, it's Bravo. So at Nugra 148, track to Tobid, turn left, intercept Han. 140 radio via Sopit to WCO, turn left, intercept BNN R29. So there's no altitude restrictions, it just says do all this stuff. So we go from Nugra to Han to Tobid to Sopit, Sopit to BNN. And then what do we do after that? Yeah, it says inbound to BNN. Oh, here it goes. Descent planning. 1 Bravo. Flight level 200 at Tobid. 15,000 at Sopit. Actual descent clearance will be asked. Directed by ATC. Okay, cool. So 20,000 at Tobid, which is here. Let's see what our FMC says right now. That is exactly what it says. So that's great. 26 miles now. So we'll set it for 15 for now. We'll set the altitude for 15. There we go. Good to know, Gio. Yeah, man. If you, yeah, definitely join me, bro. If I do get through the second leg, I don't know. We're like 30 minutes out. Like we're realistically 30 minutes out from the gate. We're a lot closer. We're 15 minutes is what our ATE says, but we still gotta descend, and we'll see. I probably won't be on VATSIM if my frames don't get any better. We're at 20 right now. Outside, I'm doing better. Again, 30. I have 10 more frames outside than I do inside. The Aircraft Pro, another time. Yes, another time. Will Tolas ever make an A320? I don't know that they need to, honestly. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think, I mean, they already have a 19, they have a 21. I mean, it makes sense for them to make a 20, but at the same time, I mean, Flight Factor already has an A320, even though it's not as good on frames. I get that. I don't think it should be too difficult for them to make an A320. I just wonder how that would work. I mean, having basically 3 A320s, because Jar Design already has an A320. I think this is Manchester we're flying over. Let me see. No, this is not Manchester. This is a place called Stoke-on-Trent. Never heard of it. Never heard of it. This is where we're at. It's nice looking. But I know that Tolas has some kind of hand in helping with the A350 with Flight Factor. So it sounds like, you know, since they're both working a lot of Airbus stuff, they're actually coming together and working together, which I think is a great thing. But I wonder if Tolas comes out with the A320, if that would step on Flight Factor's toes, since it sounds like they already kind of have a bit of a partnership and working together. But I would rather them come together and make things super amazing for us. Maybe get things done faster. Lee's Aviation, what's up? Why are you flying during Corona? Is it a full flight? Yes, it's a full flight. Somebody gotta fly. There's still planes flying. Alright, we gotta descend, don't we? Why is it red in here? Oh, 6 miles. Let's go ahead and start descending now. We'll keep the speed the same. And since I always usually miss my top of descent, I usually come in too high. We're gonna descend a little bit early. Down to 150 we go. What is that light? You see that like red hue we got going on here? Yeah, I would also love to see the A350 V2. I don't have the first one, and I kind of refuse to buy it, so I don't know. Is it good? Any of you guys have the A350? Yeah, is it any good? Like, is it worth the money right now, or should I wait for a newer version? Because nothing has really impressed me enough from what I've seen of the A350 for me to buy it. Magdalena, you do not have a computer and you want X-Plane 11. What is the minimum cost for everything? Huh, that's a great question. I mean, if you're gonna have to buy a computer, and the minimum computer that can probably run X-Plane at a way that you would enjoy it and you know, see everything good. I don't know, I'm thinking like 1,500, 2,000, just in the computer. Like just, that might include, yeah, just in the computer. I'm not sure that includes like monitors and like joysticks. You don't need a joystick. Well, you do. It'd be good to have something, but it's kind of a hard one to answer. It kind of depends on what deals you get. Yeah, that's what I heard. The A350 doesn't have any sits and stars. That's one thing that turned me off from the A350. I'm like, why would I fly a plane that doesn't even have sits and stars? One of the, like, not basic, but one of the very important key parts. And you gotta use simple F2. Yeah, those two things, an airliner with no sit and star, that also uses a default FMC. I'm like, nah, I'm good, man. I'll wait till V2. Like, I'm not you know, my life is good without the A350 right now. I'm good. I'm not missing out. Not missing out. I mean, the Zibo has a default-ish FMC, but it's different. Alright, what city is this we're flying over now? Looks like Birmingham? Yeah, I think this is Birmingham. I don't know, from what you explained to me, the A350 sounds like a $20 plane, not a $49 plane. Yeah, the Magnite 787 could be an alternate for sure. I do have that. It's been updating quite a lot. I haven't streamed it yet. I think I'm getting pretty close to thinking about streaming it though. The reason I haven't streamed it because I didn't think it was really great quality yet to really focus on it for a stream or anything like that. But it seems like it's getting really good. They've done some better modeling on it. They've been working on the systems and things like that. I've seen a lot of people streaming it now. It's a really good long haul plane, obviously, because it's a 787. Yeah, in the cockpit right now, I am struggling, and we're not even in London yet. Like, we're right at 20 frames right now, which is basically unacceptable. Now, if I were to load into London Heathrow, like, without flying in the Heathrow, I'll probably get better frames, but because we're flying in the Heathrow, that is affecting me as well. Yeah, that's the good thing about this. The Magnite 787 too is improving. Like you can see, like that it's updating very. You know, it's kind of like Zibo. How Zibo is continuously updating, continuously making it better, making it. That's one of the reasons Zibo 737 is so good because it's continually growing and getting better and taking feedback from the community, taking feedback from real life pilots, things like that, and it's getting so much better. And the same thing's happening with the 787. And I believe like a year from now, the 787 is going to be one of the most flown planes. Well, depending on what else comes out. But yeah, I do agree. It does need a lot of work still, but it's come a long way from where it was. I think they just updated the sound or whatever, and I think that was a big deal for me for sure. Like I was like, I'm not even gonna touch this thing today. They make the sound better because the sound was horrible before. What up, champion? Good to see you, man. Welcome to the stream, bro. Do I have the Falcon 50EX in your hangar? I absolutely do. Matter of fact, I have a review for it, and I have a tutorial video on how to start it. I almost flew it last week, but I had an issue with the mod I was using with it, and I was not able to get it going. I mean, I had so many problems with X-Plane last week, it was crazy. Yeah, Graham, 20. We'll see what happens. This is why this is a test. I probably could easily make those frames better if I drop some of my settings down. One thing I'm looking forward to too, guys, is X Enviro on Vulcan. I'm looking forward to that. Big time. Apparently there's gonna be like multi-layers of clouds now with Vulcan. I mean with the new X Enviro update whenever that comes. So I'm pretty hyped about that. Yeah, Mark, the one with the GTN in the MFD. Have you tried that one? Have you had any issues with it? I think it might have messed up my autopilot, but it might not be I don't know. But my autopilot was my GPS wasn't working after I installed the MFD GTN 750 mod in the Falcon 50. We shall see, Patrick. I don't know, a lot of people kind of were turned off by X Enviro's performance in the past, so we'll see if this Vulcan helps X Enviro's reputation. I hope it does, because I personally enjoy it. I think my computer, maybe my computer is just strong enough to handle X Enviro, so I really haven't had the biggest issue with it. Like, people say they lose a lot of frames. Personally, I only lose like maybe 3 frames to X Enviro, maybe. Speaking of frames, let's see what's taking up all of ours. Let's go to, I think it's Show Plugin Admin. I love this screen. And we can go to, I think, Performance, we can see what exactly is doing what. So we have X-Plane, we have X-Lua, which is doing, I think X-Lua is actually, that's the Zibo. AOS, I don't know what AOS is. What is AOS? But you can just kind of see how much, what percentage everything is doing. X-Camera is taking up a tiny bit too every once in a while. Avatab. The Zibo plugin. But not much. But I like this new screen they've added, because it actually helps you see, like, hey, what's actually taking up most of my processing power? You can even see here it says like X-Lua is taking like 2 frames away. One thing it doesn't show is like how much the scenery. I wish it would show how much the scenery you're flying around is taking your frames. Like, we can turn off a lot of this stuff, like LIMJ. We're not even in these areas, so they shouldn't even be on. But we could hit them and try them, get rid of them. It's probably not gonna help, because again, we're not flying in. We're nowhere near Italy, and all of these are Italian airports. All right, we're fast. Let's slow up. All right, we're passing 16,000. We're almost at 15. We'll bring our speed back to 250. Speed brakes out. We're doing okay on our descent, coming through the clouds. This is a beautiful flight today, guys. It is a beautiful day out here in the UK. Shamjoy, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Is the 747-800 any good? It's okay. Just okay. Like, the 747 is such an iconic aircraft that it's hard to not be amazed by the model of the plane. Like, for me, whenever I fly 747, I'm just like, wow, this is a 747, right? I don't know, this is me anyways. I'm just like amazed by like the fact that it's a 747. But then if you really get picky with it and you look at the systems and the modeling and everything in there, and you pick it apart, you're like, it's okay. Like, it's the best 747 we got, sadly, right now. There's not a lot of options for a payware quality 747. So it's okay. Like, it's like our only option if you want something better than the default 747. There is another project being worked on, a freeware project of a 747-7 or 400, something like that, which is supposed to be really good. And I think there's a couple other 747 projects coming out later on. But at the moment, the SSG one is all we got. So like, if you're a really big 747 fan, you might like it. You might enjoy it. If you have the old 747 by the SSG and you're wondering, should I upgrade? It's for you, it may not be as big of a deal, except for it's going to be a little bit updated. It doesn't come with the cargo and all that stuff. Yes, Magdalena, I do make music. Frames right now are 20, so not good. Not good at all. All right, let's go ahead and descend down to 7,000. We're no longer on VATSIM now because our frames are 20 and we need to be above that. Alright, down 7,000. We'll go ahead and let the passengers know. They should probably have already noticed that we were lower than we were before if they're looking out the window. They're not those stupid passengers who close the windows. Why would you do that? Descent. And we'll turn the land lights on. Even though we're not below 10 yet. Do it now because I always forget. Seatbelt sounds are on. And we'll switch to vertical speed mode. About 2,000 feet per minute. Nicholas, what's up, man? Good to see you. And I can see our airport. Matter of fact, speaking of our airport, we're gonna go ahead and land 27 right, left, 27 left. Yeah, let's find out what the information is. So 1095 is gonna be our ILS. I'm gonna put that on the main and on the backup. 1095. All right, and now we need to put our CRS, which is 270. I'm gonna put that on both sides. I always put it on both sides personally because you never know. If it fails, who knows? Oops. Alright, passing 13,000. Now this approach is gonna bring us right over London, and this is really gonna. This is again, whenever you test your frames, you want to test it in a worst case scenario. This is gonna be the worst case scenario. Flying in a Zibo. Zibo's already pretty frame intensive for me. It has been anyways. And then London is the worst place. London and freaking New York are the two worst places for me to fly over for frames. Are our speed brakes still out? No, okay. It is beautiful though, I'll say that much. Like, even if I'm, like, sometimes when I'm flying with myself, I don't even mind that I'm getting 20 frames because I can see everything in slow motion and how beautiful it is. Like, that's just me though. Paul Sawyer, thank you very much, man. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it too. I'm enjoying the fact that we've made it this far. And I really do want to make it to Amsterdam. I really do want to make it out there. You can kind of in the distance see some of the buildings out there. You see it's getting more and more populated. We're still getting, now on the outside view, we're now dropping down to the low 20s, just over 21 frames per second. Can you imagine what it would be like flying through London on Microsoft Flight Simulator? Would it be like this? Would it be better? Would it be not as good? We don't know unless you're alpha testing. I will get the second flight set up and ready just in case we do get a chance to do it. Also, funny story, guys. Last night, something weird I'm gonna tell you guys about my wife is that she likes burnt popcorn. I call it well done. Wait, no, that's not the right word. I call it burnt. She calls it well done. I love popcorn. I don't like burnt popcorn, and I hate the smell of burnt popcorn. Well, right now, my apartment smells like burnt popcorn because she made herself some burnt popcorn. But the thing is, she went to the extreme last night, and not even on purpose, but it's hilarious because I wanted to make her eat it anyways. I wish I would have took a picture. She made some burnt popcorn last night, and it was burnt. Like, that thing was literally on fire. It looked like charcoal. It was black. I didn't know popcorn could get that burnt. And we're fast. Let's have some speed brakes. So down 7,000. Yeah, let's see. We're gonna want to be at 2,500 on the final approach. And we're out here. I think we're flying to the final approach right now. But yeah, she made that burnt popcorn. It was horrible. She was like, oh, she was so sad. It was hilarious though. I was laughing so hard. I had to open the door. I thought the fire alarm was gonna go off. It was so disgusting. And I was like, you know what's gonna smell like burnt popcorn here for like a week? So yeah, that is my story. Is there gonna be a stream tomorrow? I don't know yet. I have not decided. It depends on work. What is our weather in Heathrow right now? Anybody care to give me the ATIS? Actually, I have it already. 100 at 8 knots. Altimeter 1019. So same as it was in Edinburgh. This music is so chill. My God. All right, now frames are taking a hit, man. We are at 17 frames per second right now. I'm gonna kill the music though, so we're on our approach. Gone. Peace. And we'll turn our in-game sounds up just a little bit as we get closer to London. Well, technically we're already in London. Yep, I see London City. Alright, there's 6,000. Let's continue on to 3,500 now. We got quite a few things to do here. We still gotta fly a plane. Okay, slow down to like 230. Let's do 235 because we are low on frames. We're actually going slower than we really are. Vertical speed up. And 1,500 feet. We'll do 18. It's a crazy thing too, like it's like I'm getting 18, you know, knocking on the door of 20 right now, but look how smooth though. I'm actually gonna turn my track IR on, show you guys like kind of how the frames, how it might not be smooth. I might not be. So if I look, yeah, so it doesn't really look super stuttery as it used to. Like whenever you had really bad or low frames or like in a high density area, you would get so much stuttering. And even though I'm getting lower frames, it's still smoother, which is weird. Like I don't understand how that works. Look at that. You can probably see it better if I go slow motion. So, oh wait. London in all its glory. There's a Ferris wheel. Iconic bridge down there. So definitely, now we're getting 22. So I guess whenever we were loading the buildings before, we were getting oh, now we have 17. So I guess it depends on what direction we're looking. So we look down that way. That is beautiful though. So like honestly, like I don't want to turn my buildings down. Like the density of the amount of buildings that are here are really what make this scenery look good. Maybe I'll turn my texture quality down or turn off the shadows maybe. Maybe that can help us get the performance that we want and get us above 30 frames. Alright, now we've turned and we're basically turning to final. Get down to 2,500 now. Not much time to sightsee. Heathrow's gonna be off our nose here in a little bit. And I'm gonna hit approach mode, so that'll be armed for us. Where's approach? There it is. Yeah, we're above the glide slope. We're gonna slow down. We go to 200 even. There's Heathrow right there. Lane lights are already on. Check. And we'll let them know they're about to land. Let's get down to like 200, 2,000 even. I need to get below that glide slope.
1,000 to go.
And we'll set our RTO to, we'll do 2. We shouldn't need too much.
2,500.
We'll see. You guys were mentioning earlier that the updated Zibo was a bit floaty, but for me, every plane is a bit floaty.
Turned off and stowed. You may continue to use your small IoT devices, but they must be unplugged from the outlets that airplane.
What up, Ghost Custom? Good to see you, man. Alpha Sim, this is not Ortho 4XP. This is Orbx True Earth South. And also have London City down there too, so it's even more detailed. Look at that. Like, I wouldn't mind flying to London in real life just to see that view in the 27 left. Alright, speed's coming down really nicely. We are, looks like 4 miles. Wow, we're pretty freaking close, so we're fast. Alright, bringing some flaps in last minute. And gears coming down. Alright, let's land the plane. Speed brake is out, that's why we're dropping speed so quickly. And then the gear is kind of like a speed brake too.
1,000.
There's our runway. I'm running defaults, the default Aerobasque Heathrow, so there's nothing special about my Heathrow. What up, Thomas? Good to see you, man. Jumbo Captain, thank you very much as well. And yeah, Alpha Sim, it looks great. It's very hard on frames, but it looks amazing. Like, I always wonder how the heck they made their trailer look so freaking smooth. Like, there's no freaking way. All right, there's 140. We can probably go 135 maybe. I don't really know what our landing speed is exactly. I'm just kind of guessing. All right, taking that away. Flaps are down full. Auto brakes are set. Send in your predictions, guys. At 400, let's go ahead and take control. Alright, I have controls. And let's get rid of auto throttle too.
300.
Alright, out of the plane. Alright, 13 frames right now on approach in London Heathrow. That is not good.
100.
15.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
And we're down, baby. There's a nose wheel. And reversers are green.
80 knots.
80 knots cross check. Here comes 60. Manual braking. Let's see if we can make this first exit. Nope, nope. Not gonna make that one. Make the second one. Do the second one. Very nice. Welcome to London Heathrow, beautiful people. It's been a long time since we've flown out of here because of the amounts of scenery I have in this place.
Would you please use caution when opening the overhead bins to prevent injury from any items that may have shifted during the flight. You may now use mobile phones and other handheld electronic devices. However, laptop computers may not be used at this time.
Again, this is I believe I might be incorrect, but I think this is default. I know I have not bought any London scenery from what I remember. Oh, let's park over here. It's true, Paul. It's true. We were getting 13 frames, yet it was very smooth. A very smooth 13, which is not something I'm used to. But either way, I still want to get that number up. Like, I want to double that. So, I'm probably going to do some more testing out here around Heathrow because, again, whenever you test for frames, you want to test in the worst case scenario. And where is these parking spots are weird. Why are there 2 gates over there? I guess it's a heavy spot. Paul, thank you for the subscription, man. Welcome to the Blue Arrow family. I don't know if this airport is gonna have like jetways or SAM or any of that stuff. Let's take this one. I don't even see the line. Where's the line at? Is that it? Nope, that's not it. The dotted line. Where the heck? I don't think there's a parking spot here. No, there's not. Alright, we'll just pull in here. Yeah, I see a gate number. There's a line right there. Oh, if that's the... Nope, that's not the line. That's a different line. Whatever, I don't care. Alright, we'll park it there. I don't think that gate's gonna work. Oh well. Alright. Should I bother turning AP on? I guess I should. Should have done that right after we landed. I always forget. As far as people who guessed for our landing, we got a 246, which I honestly thought we would have gotten the hundreds that time. Like, it felt pretty smooth. We'll see on the replay how it actually went, but it felt pretty good to me. Alright, parking brake is on. Flaps are up. Speed brakes are up. Turn off the auto brake. Waiting for the APU to power up so we can shut the engines off. Raven, what happened to DCS? They pushed back or delayed the release of the Super Carrier update. So I decided to come back to X-Plane today. I was very let down by it too, but I would rather them put out a finished product than something that's broken anyways. I would have hated to be streaming DCS, carrier update, and it was freaking crashing every few seconds. So they said that this should come out later. Is my APU on? Light never came on, but there it is. Gotcha. All right, shut it down. Nah, I love that sound. Whew. Yeah, so we got a what did I say? 246 for that landing. So let's go watch it back and see how we did. We're already offline, so we can just go ahead and hit the replay button. Right now on the ramp, I'm getting 20. So really in London, since we got near London, we've been like right at 20 frames. But very smooth 20 frames. Now here we go on replay. I think we did bounce. I think you're right. We'll see. Right now, 16 frames. Not sure why we get so little right at Heathrow. All right, here we go. And looks like we did get a little float there. And no, we didn't bounce. We did not bounce. I think the reason that we came in so hard was because of the float. Here. Yeah, I don't know how this view is gonna work out because we got Heathrow in the background, so it might be a little. It might. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Right, here it comes. Yeah, I have Amsterdam scenery. I have really nice Amsterdam scenery. It didn't look bad in replay either. I'm gonna see it again. Man, that 737 looks so good landing. It looks so good when it lands, doesn't it? Yeah, we kind of like at the very last second, it kind of came down a little bit harder, so I think I get why we got it in the 200s for that landing, but still not too bad. That really wasn't. That wasn't a butt clitcher landing. That was a decent landing. Let's do one more view. We'll do two. I can't just do one more view. We'll do two. The wing view from behind the wing, and then we'll do one from in front of the wing, and then we'll. Should we do the second leg? I know you guys want me to do the second leg. You might have to do. I need to make up for the fact that we didn't make up our second leg yesterday, so I might go ahead and do it. And I don't know if I'm gonna stream tomorrow, so we might go ahead and do that second leg to Amsterdam. What up, Captain Stocks? Good to see you, man. Yeah, that's like a normal. That was an average landing right there, just judging by the head shake. Again, I love this right here, the vibration on the flaps when they're fully extended. Alright, one more view, and then we'll see if we can quickly turn this plane around for Amsterdam. Not bad. I'll take it. Now we're gonna stick to the same plane for the second leg. I don't want to have to reload another plane. Plus, we'll be flying the KLM's home base, so we gotta support. All right, let me get my next flight set up and ready. Love those reversers. Love it, love it, love it. Man, I love the sound too. Alright. Exit out of replay mode. Back into the cockpit we go. And let's get this thing set up for our second flight. Alright, we're already on APU power. Yeah. Yeah, we're on APU power, turn the APU bleed on. We'll leave the packs on, I guess. Probe off. Yaw damper off. Nav lights will stay on, lower light will leave it on. Beacon light will come off. Brakes are already on, signal signs off. Must be missing something. Alright guys, we're headed to Amsterdam. And I don't think, actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's let's adjust some settings really quick. And it might crash. If it crashes, we're done for the day. If it doesn't crash, we will continue with the second leg. But I want to see if we can get some better frames out here in Heathrow. Again, this is a test, so this is kind of the reason we're out here. I'm assuming, I don't want to turn this down. This is the last thing I want to turn down is the number of objects, because I love how it looks with this many objects. Aliasing, I'm down to turn that down, like way down. Let's go all the way down to 2x. I don't think texture is gonna change. I might have to reload the sim. I'll turn it to high though, and we'll see if it'll actually take. Usually you have to reload X-Plane just for this to work. Look how many textures are loaded right now, 4,000. And then we probably turn off draw shadows, and I bet you that's gonna work. I'm gonna do all three of these things. Well, actually two, just these two, and we'll see what happens. I'm hit done, and let's see what happens. Last time I did this, it crashed. So, Captain Socks, I think it's up to you, man. Enter at your own risk, bro. Enter at your own risk for sure. With beta, because you just don't know. I recommend trying it, because the good thing about it is you can try beta and then you can unload beta. You can go back to the original. So it's not like you can't go back. It's not like a point of no return. So that's what I did. I actually did it like 3 different times. Yeah, I agree with Robin. If you have a lower end system, or if you've been really already struggling heavily with frames, definitely try out the beta. We definitely need people like that who are struggling with frames to test it out, so that they can see how it's performing for you. Oh man! All right, well that's going. Let me get the flight ready. If it finishes, I'm not very confident. I'll be honest with you. Not very confident. Anthony, what is beta? Beta is just X-Plane's update right now. X-Plane's updating with a new system that's hopefully gonna make people's frames better, and that's what the update is. It's nothing flashy. It just gives you better performance. But what up, Anthony? Good to see you, man. Yeah, you used to have to reload. I guess not anymore, but you used to, in the old X-Plane version, you had to reload the whole sim for the textures to update. But I don't think you do now. Emery Laser, what's up? Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. IXEG, I have not flown that plane. I've heard great things about it, but I've never really thought about buying it, honestly. How much is that plane? I can't remember how much that plane is. If I want to fly something old school, I usually would fly like the FlyJ 7727 or MD-80, which is not as old school, but it's still old. Gio said you don't even feel like. Get up, bro. He said he was gonna fly when he was taking a leg. Let's go. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, what's that sound? Encountered Vulcan device loss error. Let me show you guys this. You probably can't even see this. I knew this was gonna happen. This happens every freaking time I try to reload my settings during Vulcan. Check this out. This is X-Plane and this is what I got. Encounter Vulcan device loss error. X-Plane cannot continue running and will now quit. Result, please report this to Laminar. So this is the reason I didn't do this earlier in the stream, because I knew this was gonna happen. Okay, well, it is what it is. Here comes the crash. That sucks. I actually want to do the leg. To be honest with you, I want to do it. Gio, you got the 727 sitting in the hang. We need to take it out, bro. We need to take the 727 out. That'll be a lot of fun. There it goes. It just crashed. Just crashed. Yay. That's what I expected to happen. So I'm not even upset. So that's what I expected to happen. So now you guys can see everything on my screen. All the crap I have open in the background during my stream. This is my desktop. Is anything on here you're not supposed to see? No, I think we're good. Just making sure. Let me switch it back over though. Where was I? Maybe close some programs. They're all necessary. They're all essential. No, they're not. I had Project Fly open. I have VATSIM open. Project Fly just tracks my flight. I had OBS running. I had what was that thing? Active Sky running in the background. And then I have my music playing in the background. That's basically everything I have playing or running in the background. Well, guys, I'll be honest with you. I want to do another flight, but I personally do not have the patience to wait for X-Plane to load again. Especially in the Orbx area, because it takes forever to load Orbx. So that's gonna be it for today for Wing View Wednesday. I hope you guys did enjoy today's test. I don't know yet if I will be streaming tomorrow. I honestly don't know. If I do, I have no idea what I'm gonna stream. Honestly, no idea. I know Friday I do plan on streaming X-Plane. I'll probably fly either. I don't know. I might put a poll out there, so if you guys want to see me test. I might either fly an Airbus or we could fly. I kind of want to try like a 727 or the MD-80. It's kind of what I got in my mind right now to try out. That's what I got in my mind right now. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what we decide to do. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Do some shout outs while we have some time. While we're chilling. Where is my thing that I'm looking for? There it is. Alright, that's not looking so bad. Falcon 50. Not a bad idea. 787. I'm gonna put a poll out on my community probably later today, and I'll let you guys decide who we fly next. But shout outs real quick, guys. Thank you, Philly, coming through. Robin, Raven, Christopher Ramirez, Renee, Sim Pilot. Thank you very much, Captain KAV, Guy Graham, Gio. Prayers answered. I know you didn't want to get up. Maybe we should do some trucking tomorrow. I might do that too. We'll see. Robin says you can max your settings, everything, flying with a single 1080p with the most powerful GPU and CPU, upgrading to 2 4K screens soon. Wow, that's crazy, man. Dimitri, thank you for watching. I don't know what the previous song was because I saw your message late. Sorry about that, man. Who else we got in here? While I am awaiting. AV Geek, I think Anthony Plays, thank you, man, for watching. Anthony Flies, sorry, not Anthony Plays. I don't think he's here right now. AMR Laser, thank you, man. Captain Austin, thank you, my man. Magdalena, thank you for coming through. Diego Official, thank you, bro. Appreciate that, dude. Do I have 5M? Technically, yes, I do. Jake, thank you, man, for coming through. No problem, no problem. Matter of fact, let's see. Let's show the community some support right now, guys. Let's see who is who's online, if anybody's online right now. I don't see anybody streaming on YouTube on my, wait, who is this? Avio Man, my dude. Avio Man is live. Let's see. Yeah, boy, I'm gonna put him on the spot right now. Hold on a second. This is gonna be funny. This is gonna be funny. Where's it at? Where's my button at? There it is. There's my button. Here it comes. Wait, that's not the button. Yeah, here it is. Here's the button. All right, my man. Let's show Avio Man some love. He's been a great, supporter of the channel for a long time. He's a great guy. He's been streaming for a minute. I don't know what he's doing right now. He's doing something in Poland. He's in Zibo. He's flying. Doesn't matter. It's X-Plane. Go show this dude some social. Let's go show this dude some support. Let him know where you came from, though. We're gonna raid the channel real quick and say hi. Thank you guys though for watching. You're amazing. Thanks for coming through and supporting the Blue Air Royal family. Thanks to all the new subscribers, to all the follows on Twitch as well. You guys are amazeballs. But stay safe out there, man. Stay clean. Get your mask on if you gotta put the mask on. Do what you gotta do, man. Do what you gotta do, man. To stay safe, stay healthy, man. I'm praying for you, loving on you guys. Remember, you have 3 choices: give up, give in, and give it all you got. Peace, love, and God bless you. It's time to hit that outro. I'm out.